Hello, I'm Jack Cole, and I'm here with my good friend David Duvall for another episode of our conversations, No Art, No Life. Good afternoon, David.
So good, as
Mhm.
always, to be with you, Jack.
Feel the same.
I'm like, wow, at least I have real human being now to talk about music and everything else that occurs to me. And as we have said, it's the idea of sharing. So I hope that, you don't mind sharing it because you never know these days.
True.
I'm so confused, aren't you? The whole world seems topsy-turvy. It's not like I'm sailing the ocean blue, that's for sure. Um, when Jack came today, he gave me a copy of Acoustic Shadows. And Acoustic Shadows is a book of essays by Jack, and the subtitle is Essays from a Standing Pianist. You want to stand at all? No. All right now. A wonderful cover with a jack-o'-lantern from Hollywood, Halloween. And I want to tell you that this is a book that I not only think is so good for you to read. Yes, it's not an easy read because I find his prose to be so good that you have to actually read. Um, Acoustic Shadow, we'll begin with a foreword, and I want to tell you the truth. It's my foreword, but that does not mean that I am not telling you that my foreword is insignificant compared to all of the essays. The last essay, The Secret Teaching of Gordon Jenkins, they're also provocative, the titles. Can a cowboy film be a work of art? You must read that. Praise of God in Solitude, fantastic. It's a title that I helped him on because of the great piano work called Benediction to God in the Solitude. There are many things. America's Greatest Family, Looking for a Polly Benedict, The Myth of Absolute Union. I really think that since it's brand new, it should be sold by the hundreds of millions. Where do we get it? Of course, that place called A. Are we allowed to say that at all?
I would
Yes.
imagine so.
I think you could say, you could certainly buy it. Jack Cole, the author, and Amazon.com, right?
I think so.
And I know that all of your stuff is there.
Thank you, David. Yes, it is.
I know my stuff is there. Certainly the greatest art book that I've ever produced, the only one, which you and I did together, of my paintings and drawings, called Selected Paintings and Drawings of David Duvall. And I'm hoping that throughout our long series that we are hoping to continue for a long time, that people will look at that, buy that on Amazon as well, because there's about 150 works in it. And right now we've been working on the drawings of David Duvall.
Yes.
So, we're prolific in our little way. We have our little legacy, and we need, of course, you the public, you the people that would subscribe to this, and for all of you that are interested really in ideas. We are going to talk a lot, as we have, on the piano, on painting, not on politics in the vulgar sense of how TV does it day and night with the same stories day and night. We are going to delve into it a little deeper, as we have in our previous 5 or 6 YouTubes. Jack, I've just introduced the book. I'm really curious to see if next week we have some sales. And I want you to just talk a little bit about it, because it's beautiful, beautiful book. Well done in every way. Not long. My books, some of them are so long that my wrists hurt. Like the Art of the Piano.
Well, the books may be long or large in dimension, but they give a sense of brevity in the experience because they go by with relish for me.
Thank you so much. Thank God I have a fan like you.
Well, I've been reading them since my school days.
Yes. And I know since your school days you've been listening to my radio
I
shows,
have.
which
Yes.
still exist.
Mm-hmm.
How wonderful. Tell us about Acoustic Shadows. Tell us about the other books too, because everyone always is pumping up their stuff, and we really never do. We're interested in productivity more than selling, because we're so poor it doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, I guess the 3 essay books, which all have the subtitle Essays from a Standing Pianist, reference something that you and I talk about a lot, which is how the piano seems to not be a parceled thing that's just dedicated to performance or honoring the legacy of the composer one is rendering, but how it seeps metaphorically into the work that is the self. And by that, I don't even just mean the musical self. The metaphorical grist that starts to affect the whole human being. And hence, by calling it Essays from a Standing Pianist, I mean how the effect is rendered in all the times that I'm not at the piano, which is proportionally a lot more than even in the times when I practice a lot. So I don't know of anything that has given me more grist for application in scenarios that would seem to be at the point that is farthest from the piano than the piano. We were even talking today, we started the conversation with a question that I had for you about what I would maybe call a block, in the sense that I've invested a lot of time in a particular piece. With a fair degree of objectivity, I can say I can render it cleanly. And yet for some reason, at this time in my life, though I've never had problems with memory, this particular piece I cannot seem to commit to memory. So it yielded into a conversation for us as to whether or not that block, or that relative sense as to whether or not one should remain committed to the time one has invested in the piece, such that one is so close to finishing it, or should one regard the fact that maybe the piece isn't speaking to the person? So again, the person as the work that the piece is feeding, that became our question of the day. Is the piece failing me at this point, or am I failing the piece?
Yes, and we went into it pretty deeply. We took a lot of time because it's such an extraordinary question, and of course it's not just the piano. It can be anything that anyone has. Let's say they've written a novel and they just can't get the last chapter, or the last. They can't move on it. I would tell them, just as I told you, in my opinion, I would not tolerate in the long run me losing the fact that I could complete this, even if it's not exactly the way you want, because conception and realization are never exact. I mean, Horowitz said, "I wish I could get the conception into the realization the way I want," and that's why I work. That's why he worked. He wanted to get that conception and the realization together. It was a great, incredible thing. I've never done that once with any piano piece I've played. There will always be some phrase that was too loud, or a crescendo that didn't come out, or whatever. But there's so much at stake in your inner life because you've given it so much time. Could be, a form of athlete. You want to have a personal best. You want to run that mile in 4 minutes, let's say, which I don't think the average person can do.
Right.
But it's extraordinary to try. What a wonderful thing. I loved running when I was in high school. And then as I became an adult, I just couldn't bear the fact of running. I needed something a little deeper. But
and yet you told me you had a very creditable high school mile time.
Yeah, I did. I had a good mile time when I was on the team, and was one of the better runners, and took it seriously. I think that's one of the things that I have always done. If I try something, that means that I really want to do it, because if I don't want to do it, I cannot bear the idea of even opening a bill. Let alone paying it. How dare they ask me to pay this? I mean, I'm working for culture, right? So,
and I came to you today with the question of the block in terms of the piece, in respect to memory and memorizing. And I've just been noticing, and this is drifting into current events, people that I had never thought would have recourse to an iPad or the score, seeing it a bit more recently. And do you think that's because the original impetus has lost its grip, or because people aren't aware of the tradition as much and they're not as shocked when they see the score?
No, they should be shocked, because that's the first thing that a piano teacher does, is to instill the pianist or violinist, cellist, oboe player, tuba, doesn't matter what part it is, that they have to memorize it. Not in an orchestra. I don't like the idea of orchestras playing with music either. I know that many people have never thought of that, and they of course all do.
I think Hans von Bülow insisted on that, didn't he?
In the 19th century, Hans von Bülow, the conductor, for his own orchestra in the city of Meiningen, I guess it was called, he made them not only do it from memory, think of this, think of it, but stand up. They had to stand up through the whole piece. Standing essays by a standing pianist by Jack Cole. And look at that wonderful color blue on that. And they did it. They were terrified of Hans von Bülow. He's a real martinet. He would, I think he would take his bow and arrow and shoot you. He was one of the dominant conductors of the late 19th century, Hans von Bülow. He was the son-in-law of Franz Liszt until Wagner took Cosima away from him. And it was one of the scandals of 19th century, middle 19th century Europe. The idea that Liszt's daughter-in-law would leave his son-in-law, who he adored and taught, for Wagner, who he adored and taught and worked for so hard. Franz Liszt did. Franz Liszt is someone that you and I can never get enough of, right?
Agreed.
He is almost like an ultimate life to lead. So we were talking about what were we talking about, Jack, in the last moment where I've just lost the thread?
In respect to memory.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, for example, if I've read this correctly, that Mendelssohn thought that playing from memory was in bad taste because it intimated that the performer was passing off the work as if it was his own, and that he would even have music on the stand that he had memorized and have a page turner, just so that the notion of the honor of disavowing ownership wasn't being perpetrated. So
I never knew that. That's a very, very interesting thing, and shows Mendelssohn's character very much so, because in the earlier days of his career, he didn't live long, of course, 1809 to 1847. He was, in Clara Schumann's words, the greatest pianist in Europe, as well as all of his talents in other directions, including even draftsmanship. He drew and painted very well. No, but that's an interesting thing, because yes, he wanted to give deference to the composer, but the performer was getting more and more popular, and Liszt's and Clara's career were becoming noted in every city as a major event when they played. They took the music away so they could have a more romantic viewpoint of the artist looking at the stars, so to speak. And that one prevailed, and it prevailed for very good reason. I don't like to see someone turning pages. I don't like to see someone next to me bothering me turning the pages.
Right.
And I also like the idea that you don't know a piece until you have memorized it, because you have to have that that ability to give all. You can't give all when you're looking. I can't even look and not make mistakes. So I said, please memorize it. Here's a good example, which we didn't talk about this morning, in the sense of a block. A young person comes to my class Tuesday night, in Piano Evenings with David Duval, and she plays the Schumann Concerto. She's going to do this soon in the Clyburn competition, and so she wants to try it out. And she did try it out, and she tried it out with the machine.
The tablet.
The tablet, where the tablet is used mostly by pianists for new music
Mm-hmm.
or difficult, modern music and so forth. Even there, I'm disappointed. I do not want the vocal, don't want that eye looking at notes. You can't give it all. And Arthur Lester, my own teacher, I agreed with me. He said, no, you can't know it unless you play it without notes, or as they used to say in the 19th century, from heart.
Yes.
From the heart. We don't have a heart anymore.
Yes, to play by heart. No one says that anymore.
No.
Why do you think we've dropped that?
Because we're machines.
Mm.
We want to express it by memory, which means every dot and dash. You don't want to make a mistake. You just have to, play it the way the Urtext says, or the. So I think that's one of the reasons. So here it is. This young woman comes up. She has her accompanist next to her, and the Schumann Concerto, which is absolutely, one of the great romantic. I call it romantic classical because it's Schumann. It's a very different composer than from the early suites, which are, almost hallucinatory. This is a very, very classic work, very iridescent, very beautiful. Okay? I'm very surprised that all of a sudden she has her Schumann Concerto on the pad. Well, this is a repertory piece. No, you should never play a repertory piece with the music. Nobody should.
What do you think about Richter late in life starting to do that?
I don't want to see him do that either.
Do you think he really needed it?
Yeah, I don't think he knew the pieces well enough.
Was that the reason?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know his personal reasons. I know that whatever he said, he contradicted the next day. It was always interesting. But yeah, he had his lamp, and it was intimate, and he didn't go to big cities, and everyone would say Richter is playing today, and they all jammed into the little town.
Yes.
I can tell you the truth. He probably sight read so well, and he's looking.
Yes.
I don't want him to look. It distracts me to see someone look. Music is not the written word. It is in the air, and I don't want to have to watch someone play it from the notes. We learn it from the notes. I'm a great admirer of notation. I love the fact that as soon as you said Schubert, I see the music in my mind and how he writes for the piano. It's not very good the way he writes for the piano. If you want to really have a hard job ahead, and you take a Schubert sonata. Well, he had a hard job, Richter. Yes, it's not easy, any of them, because they're so awkwardly made. But I still don't want to see him do it. Now, today we're very liberal. Well, let people do whatever they want. No. Tradition in music is important. Clara and Robert knew they were freeing the pianist, especially Liszt. He could sight read anything in the world.
Yes.
Anything. It was unbelievable, the nervous system, the translation from the note into the figure, into the eye. No, but the fact is that she played the concerto so poorly. So poorly with that I actually said after she went, I said, nobody should play a standard repertory work with music. You cannot give all. And next week, the same woman played D minor Mozart, giving her the chance to, and she knew the piece better, you see. It was so much better.
And she didn't use the score.
And she didn't use the pad, the score, no.
What do you make of the lore of someone like Marlon Brando presumably demanding that the lines that he had to speak were hidden around the set? And that he argued that it gave him greater freedom not to be encountering the lines except as if for the first time. Could one imagine, I'm just playing devil's advocate for a moment, that if we remove the terror, and I will say the word terror because I would say that's the thing that probably feels most forbidding from my own memory of playing the piano in public, is how am I going to get out of a slip, especially if it was a piece like a solo work with an orchestra. I could imagine escaping a problem when it's only my problem to escape from. But the notion of trying to find my way when I had so many people with me, I found terrifying. And mercifully, it's funny, it didn't happen under those circumstances. Maybe the terror made one have all the more of the focus. But could an argument be made that someone like a Liszt, who was such a great reader, could have maybe rendered sometimes a greater performance when he's encountering the work for the first time and it's no longer something that he's recounting from his nervous system?
Many people had said of Liszt that he played it from sight, no matter how difficult, better the first time. Because
that's what I meant, yes.
They said he's bored the second time and he starts putting his own things in it,
Yes.
changing it. And of course, you see a man that creative, what's the big deal about playing a piece that he himself probably has written etudes better than the one he is just, except for the Chopin etudes,
Yes.
better than he's playing. So of course, someone that great is bored with it the second time. He has all of God's glory in him.
Yes.
The eye coordination, the physical coordination, the immense capacity for length of time. He could play hours without. He's a very slender guy, and obviously everything physically in the world that a pianist could beg for. Perfect memory, great composer. So of course, if there's a little memory thing that he would work around it perfectly. As Horowitz said, "Oh, I have many memory slips in my life, but I know how to improvise."
I remember reading that in your own books about Horowitz. Now, to continue the devil's advocate position and to pull from another field, I believe it's Einstein who said that he would never memorize something that he knew he could go to a reference work or the source where he had read it, where he could then look it up again. I guess imagining that it allowed the world of insight to remain free. That being said, now that I've played the devil's advocate and becoming a standing pianist on a theme I haven't explored in writing, let's then say about memory, how it is enforced as a value at the piano, and how I notice in society now that people don't seem to remember things. And by that, most people will claim they don't remember names, they don't remember dates. I think people lie. I don't know if you feel this. I think people do remember. When I make my journeys in to see you each week, I'm amazed that though this is Manhattan, and here on the Upper West Side, it's filled with countless throngs and throes of people, I start to see the same people each week. It becomes like a village. And I think people lie when they say they don't remember things. So I think the imperative that you're talking about, that we have to remember, even under the most difficult circumstances, like a printed work of piano literature where everyone knows it, and in a sense they're almost gunning to hear errors, but that's still a great obligation to remember and to do things by heart.
Is it one of humankind's greatest things, the idea that he can remember
Yes.
for years and years in detail? I mean, what about a Rembrandt? He must have seen everything over and over again perfectly if he wanted, because I myself have some of that.
You mean when you go to produce a drawing or a painting, that you reference a memory?
I'm pretty close to what I want. I'm amazed. It's the greatest thing in the world. Nobody in the world would know if that's true of Miro or Picasso, but if they say it's true, I would believe it, because I have something of that in me, because we all have that something in us of the human potential, whatever it is. If I'm the only one in the world that says they can play the Godofsky left-hand transcriptions of the Chopin etudes, that's a lie, because he notated them and did it himself, and others can do it too.
Yes.
No matter how hard it is. Maybe only 7 people in the world, but if it's a human thing and a human potential, we can all do it.
Yes.
We just don't know who was the one that was, genetically brought here to do it. But it's also interesting, and I found it very interesting, of course, that this woman played the Mozart D minor really quite well, and the Schumann with the music, which she was going to play or maybe didn't feel she knew, played it with the iPad, and it was awful.
Mm.
I don't mean she missed any notes.
Mhm.
I mean there was no spirit, no moments of repose. The eye is a powerful instrument and wants to go to the notes.
Do you think that this simply becomes the fear of using the iPad is because as pianists we're taught to be such servants of the literature that we think that if we are not absolutely, ideally prepared, that we should take recourse to that, or was her decision fear?
I don't know her. I didn't talk to her about
Okay.
it, but her decision was fear, because the young people, no matter how they say they're bound to the printed page and everything is on it. If you really look at what they do, they have they don't know more. If I said, is it Allegro agitato, Susan? That's what her name is.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't know. The first thing she ever saw of that movement was Allegro agitato, maybe a metronome mark next to it, and the first measure.
Well, see,
and she doesn't know it's Allegro agitato.
See,
She
this
forgot.
enters an aspect of memory with the piano that I'd love to ask a question. Even when I perform a piece to my satisfaction, even in private from memory, I don't feel that I have it memorized. My body has it memorized.
Of course.
And so I'm wondering, because we were talking about the limits of musical talent. And I always tell people that though I've studied the piano all my life, all my degrees are in it, I still don't think of myself as a music guy,
Right.
as I say. Because I feel I've seen and I've witnessed what I thought are complete displays of oral command. If I may say, I feel that if I have any skills at all, I'll think in terms of language in that way, that I'll walk down the street and toy with different semantic things and orderings of words. But in music, I'm dependent on this tactile dance that I have to remember the choreography for. So,
Well
my
said.
question now is, even when I'm doing that, I still feel like I'm failing the art of memory, that I feel like someone like Liszt certainly wasn't obliged by a tactile rehearsal of choreography. He seemed to orally have an impression that then came out through the articulation of the hand. So I'm wondering then, what do you think is, for someone like me who could rely, however, on his memory via the tactile, why do I have a block with this particular toccata of Bach? I feel I can get through it decently. What do you think causes someone to start to hesitate when they're coming close and thinking, I cannot memorize this?
Well, we didn't discuss this before when we were talking about this before the camera came on, but you know, it's so possible that you really hate that part.
Mm.
You really hate that part. The unconscious will tell you if you let it, but you can't let it because you have told me something so important. You've spent so many hours in bringing this toccata to its fulsomeness, and all of a sudden it's deep in there. There's a reason. It's possible you will dream it tonight or in a week, and if you do remember it, it will have a secret for you.
You mean that there's something extra musical of value even in this block?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. That block is telling you something of a bigger thing, or just, man, God, if I can only get through this piece, I'll be able to drop it. I want to play it in David's class, let's say, or in Carnegie Hall, and then it will be over with for me.
Right.
I don't want to say to myself, I have been defeated, knowing that all I had to do, because I'm a good focuser, as you say,
Yes.
all I had to do is work harder and get to the finish line. Or some wondrous mythological, magical thing will throw the football up. You will zoom up, you come down the end zone, and the end zone will be the toccata. Who knows what the dream will spell out? You know, your dreams must be interesting because you're the author of many, many interesting essays.
Well, thank you.
And these essays are from your unconscious. You're not writing a literal text or anything. These are very, very highly wrought, dreamlike essays, of which I'm going to again recommend them. Essays from a Standing Pianist. Now, that doesn't mean it's always about piano. It's about all the things that make you, and I hesitate to say this because how much I love the piano and bow to it, but something bigger than the piano.
Yes, or something about the culture of the piano that one cannot escape. It imposes itself no matter how far one removes oneself from the piano.
It is amazing.
It really is.
The stupidest person that plays the piano in the history of my teaching will have thousands of problems with their identity with the piano.
Mm-hmm.
It will be, and I call them stupid, because they have no other thing in their lives except this madness called the piano. And I mean, I have had people come to me with records that they wanted to be played on the radio, and I would say, okay, if they were, I would, well, let's hear it. And all of a sudden I would have a half-tempo Mephisto Waltz, or I told you that one,
Yes.
or something so strange that
Mm-hmm.
that they're living in a crazy world
Mm-hmm.
where they think that they're playing this piece and they're not even coming near it. They don't even know that it's the piece, you see, but they're obsessed with the piano. Or there's this idiot savant pianist, a rock and roll impresario I knew. He came to my classes all the time. In fact, one year he never missed one class, and he dressed strangely and in black, and the kids were always wondering, who in the hell is this guy? And I called him the Mountain Man.
Okay.
You want to make something, more mysterious.
Yes.
And the long hair. He was a rock and roller and an impresario, and a very successful one. He could play Undine of Ravel from Gaspar. He could play Mephisto Waltz. He could play amazingly well everything without reading a note.
He had learned it from his
He had-
oral skills.
He had learned it in,
And so you're also giving him credit for the fact that he was not, however, maddened by it, but it somehow seemed to be a part that informed his greater existence.
it did that, but he was also obsessed with the fact that why should he be a rock and roller when he could do this?
I see.
He had no, great opinion of junk music. It just made him a lot of money. He was a pianist, and he never learned how to read notes in the early stages. It's the same thing with even a pianist of the greatness of Hoffman. He couldn't sight read very well. In fact, very poorly. How come? His ear was so great, so perfect, the absolute pitch, that he knew all of the Chopin preludes instantaneously by ear. So if he had to practice areas, he didn't like it because he didn't like to read notes. You don't want to read notes when the gods have given you this amazing, which he called spiritual hearing, and he plays them all. It's so complicated, and the piano is a very interesting piece of complication.
It is.
Yeah, as a piece of thousands of parts, and based upon the stunning example of what each person can do with their touch. Every touch is different. It's the violin is, you can make a much. No, the piano can make 10,000 touches more than anything. So it's a frustrating thing. It's a beautiful thing, and I've never known a pianist satisfied with anything they played.
Understood.
And the ones that say, "Oh, how'd you do?" I say, "Oh, I liked it." Then you know it was bad.
I understand.
Because you can't get what you want. At least I never have. Horowitz told me never has. And every reputable pianist never have. And you say, "Why are you so hard on yourself?" No, they are not. It just isn't there. You are an artist, and it's told you it's good, or it's told you it's not. But please remember, this Bach toccata resides somewhere in your nervous system that is saying to you, "I don't know why I can't do this. I've given so many hours," and you're fighting it. You're in the ring with it.
Would you say from...
Mike Tyson wouldn't stand for that. He'd kill it.
Yes. I guess one starts to wonder about time and
Oh yeah, yeah.
the time that suddenly, one gives to the piano in practice that is always simply to get back to the point of maintenance that one had achieved the previous day, and then imagining that you can constantly, in a kind of gradual way, ascend from that.
The word maintenance,
Yes.
meaning the fingers, the technique, and so forth.
And I'm wondering how much of that also is a Puritan myth that because there are fragments that I know that people struggle with that I'm indifferent to from pieces I've studied in the past that I can always summon. And I don't think about that. And I don't worry about maintaining that in my memory. But when I have a conscious active memory, now in my life I'm finding it harder. And yet it doesn't bother me in other facets of my life. And yet I feel I gained the discipline of memory from the piano. And so I'm a little bit angry at myself that the teacher of that discipline, I feel like I'm failing the teacher, though I've applied its lesson in other areas. And yet that's a Puritan thing. The piano, I think, imposes tremendous Puritan guilt.
People have died of the guilt for that they
Yes.
didn't even practice for 4 days. Let alone, I mean, you can commit suicide over the piano.
Well, my next question
Look
is...
at Alien Corn, the marvelous short story by Somerset Maugham. If you want to talk about, what it means to be a pianist and a tragic ending, read that. Oh, it was made into a movie with Dirk Bogarde also.
right.
But the story is just, and it keeps you suspended. And I'm not going to tell you the ending, but the point is that they bring in a famous pianist to give an assessment of the boy, and she's very honest, and she says, I'm sorry, you will be able to play for yourself nicely.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to be a wonderful amateur. He doesn't want that. He wants to be a concert pianist, and he's practiced 6 hours a day in Munich.
Mm-hmm.
They send him away to do, and he comes back, and she says, you're not good enough. And then she also says, if you don't believe me, I can bring in someone else who will also tell you that. I know Paderewski, I can have him come.
Mm-hmm.
That was the favorite pianist of that era,
Mm-hmm.
the Horwitz of that era. So it's amazing. Read The Alien Corn. Not as good as your writing, by the way, because he wrote quickly, and you could see slavishly, and but he's a tremendous storyteller. Yes,
Okay.
Somerset Maugham. I think his reputation has been coming back again, higher and higher. It's a terrible thing playing the piano. If you ever have children, God forbid, and you have to hear. Remember Freud? He would go crazy with a neighbor, with a pianist. Oh my God, I have to hear this again.
Mm-hmm.
There's two sides to every story.
Okay.
I'm terrified of disturbing someone. I live in an apartment. I am terrified. It never leaves my body, my bones.
But there are hours within which you are
It doesn't
assured.
matter that the law is, protects you.
Mm-hmm.
That the moment someone has complained, your nervous system will never be the same again. I had a woman above me once that came down with a baseball bat and hit my knees.
It's a very terrible topic because
Mhm.
even
Terrible.
I know that also I have probably squandered hundreds of hours as a person practicing the piano in places where one is supposed to practice, meaning practice rooms in a conservatory or university, where our practicing is influenced if we think other people are listening.
Always.
Mhm.
Curzon, the great British pianist,
Yes.
he said, when I am alone, it's wonderful. But if there's a cat in the room, I'm already performing for him.
Yes. Do you feel does that happen to you as a painter? Does another presence, like I'm always shocked when people say like Leopold Godowsky actually excelled in his composing in social melees.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard for me to imagine. And yet I have to believe him. He has a tremendous body of work. And
A tremendous body of work, and he had great talents as a pianist and a transcriber, and teacher. He was considered one of the wonders of technique in the especially the late 1890s. And then he had a stroke in the 30s, and that was the end of his career. But yeah, you're talking about.
Well, so an example would be when I encounter a painter who's, say, painting a landscape, and obviously they're outdoors and they can't secrete themselves from witnesses. Is the result going to be different?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get worse.
That's what I was thinking.
Always it gets worse with people around
Mm-hmm.
because you are always becoming a performer. You and I have, I'll call it a gift of talking easily,
Mm-hmm.
even in front of this little microphone. But this thing, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so anti-machine. The idea of naming anything is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm more cautious, not because of what I'm saying, but I'm more cautious that, okay, I can't remember that name, which I should remember it. The minute it was turned off, I will remember it, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, we have so much to say about the piano, and this, of course, is far more interesting than the many, many things on YouTube that I've heard about the piano, which are almost so superficial that, there's no reason to watch anything except this program.
Well,
No art,
Mm.
no life. Without art, and I represent art to me through all creative design, not through just piano playing. Let's face it also, you are not just a pianist. I say it again in deference to the greatness of the piano and its literature. It's not enough for you, or it's not enough for your kind of talent, because you are also a literary person. And of course, I'm also trying to make you into a visual person with my own work always around us when we talk.
Mm-hmm.
This has been an interesting and exciting couple of weeks for me, in the sense that I haven't done any line drawings, just plain lines, for maybe a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I know very well the hunger to do that will start working on me. And it did about 2 to 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And all through the month of May, the merry month of May, my dears, I have been doing almost daily a line drawing.
Mm.
To me, they are fabulous. To you, they may be just lines or stupid. But the point is, my body is getting me ready for a long time to do it. And then the minute I'm doing it every day. And today I have a yearning too.
Mm.
Open yourself up to art. That's what we're trying to say here.
Mm-hmm.
This book is, tell us of your other books too, because I really want you to be a bestseller.
Oh, well, you're very kind. Well, there are 2 other essay books with the same subtitle, Essays from a Standing Pianist. And then there are 3 novels, one of which is the book that brought us together. And I was amazed that you entertained it, because to a degree it's a anti-music novel. In a way, we began the discussion today talking about piano competitions. And it's been addressed a lot about what their failings are. So I had created a novel that I was amazed that you were sympathetic to, because the...
Yeah, well, it was also, I'm not for piano competitions or...
Right. And so I had to, but I felt
we didn't know each other then. Yeah.
Right, I had to demonize the process in a new way. And I remember thinking that I would just write a novel of a piano competition with a protagonist that perhaps the way that one has victory is to win the competition, but it seemed like such a beaten cliche. So I imagined someone with great skill who could have an almost mythic ability, as we might imagine sometimes that Glenn Gould could boast that he could, in terms of recalling an idealized performance whenever he could. In fact, the less he would render it, he would argue that, take 2 or take 3 was more compromised.
I believe him. Yeah.
Okay, so I imagined a pianist of that skill entering competitions and then winning for a while, but then because of the fickleness of the process, starting to lose. But because he was a person filled with love for humanity, his fellow man, and felt he couldn't blame the humans judging that, and he knew he was still infallible as a performer, the only thing he could then feel that was fallible was the music. So I thought I could create this madman who Ahab-like would have to somehow throw a harpoon into the heart of personified music. And so I was just touched beyond words when I picked up the phone and you said you were sympathetic to really what was an anti-music novel.
Absolutely was. I certainly
Mhm.
couldn't get it published for you,
Well-
but I did try. But
Mhm.
I said, hey, this is a man that's thinking
Well, thank you.
and writing seriously. And the word serious is important. Don't think that Bach was not a serious man.
Mm.
But I go by the Quevedo quote, which is one of the great quotes in the world. Yes, it's enigmatic. A lot of people don't understand when I will say it to them. I will say, no, it doesn't mean a thing to me. It doesn't interest me. Oh, how come? That's so interesting. Well, nothing amazes me because the world has bewitched me.
Well, that's a very optimistic. I mean, that's is probably.
Magnificent, it's
Yes.
artistic,
Mhm.
and it tells you you don't have to be interested either in all of this junk that, you know.
Mhm.
So is that great? No, I'm bewitched by something much larger.
Yes.
In our case, it could be the piano and so forth.
Mhm.
I want to though read, because we have the time, I think. A little bit, I see you from the foreword by me,
Yes.
you have this in the back, and although it's very long, I do start with a sentence by our idol, Franz Liszt, said in some music comes to you,
Mm.
and to other music you must go to it.
Mhm.
So true. And this is certainly true of literature. And then I later on say, the reader of Jack Cole's book of essays will find remarkable things without having to play piano himself. If Cole says it or does not play it, the instrument permeates his existence in many areas of life, as you have said. Hence his beguiling subtitle, Essays from a Standing Pianist, for his 3 volumes of essays. There are many allusions to personal realities in Cole's imaginative world. For example, who else would think of walking a dog in his study on the Liszt Sonata, as Cole does in the first essay in the book, Bone Over Ivory? Or would you imagine connecting the circle of fifths to a circular trail in the forest, as it's well explained in his second essay book, From the Windows of Diligence? That's a good one, good essay
Oh, thank you.
title. Even the essay Tapestry in the present volume is a story of unrequited romance. The only kind I have, by the way.
I think so. Mhm.
In this case, you don't have to go to the finishing line.
Right. I think maybe the haunting maybe is better than the realization.
Here you will find both the touch of woman and of the keyboard. And we have prose that always represents the concrete and the human. The writer gives the reader his full sway of his imaginative scope. I wrote that about this. I don't remember writing it, but it's really good because it says it.
Thank you, David. I'm honored to carry those words on
You
the
don't
book.
have to be honored. You know,
Well, I am.
I love to compliment myself day and night,
Okay, well,
even when it's ironic.
well, you earn those compliments that you give yourself.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that memory, let's go back to that topic for a minute
Mhm.
before we close today. I'm going to give you a recipe.
Okay.
I don't know where it will tally with the block at the Bach G major toccata. However, it's something that everyone should do, and I don't. Occasionally I start trying, because it's not easy. We really must do things from memory. It is really important. I'm not so sure that there's a big link up with all of this forgetting we have in this society,
Mhm.
from the bottom to the worst Alzheimer's cases, which
Mhm.
I've no idea what it means, but
Mhm.
but there is no doubt about it that our great gift is memory, and I don't want to know that I have no idea who I am. George Steiner and many, many others have said, start memorizing a poem while you're walking on the street. Do a Byron, do a Shelley, do a
Yes.
Keats, and get that memory working. No more machines, baby.
In your interview with Raymond Lewenthal, he also laments the decline of the declamation of poetry in
really?
public schools.
Really? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here was a very brilliant man, this pianist,
Mhm.
Raymond Lewenthal, who had many, many outlets besides his piano, and I think that he told me that he began piano at age 16. Do you know that?
It's in your interview and it's there. It's what always attracts me to not only to listen to those interviews over and over again, but just to marvel at the lore and legend of Raymond Lewenthal. I think he's not pulling our leg. It's incredible.
I knew the man. He was a great virtuoso, a great intellect, and a man that had such flair. He
Mhm.
wore his cape.
Yes. Mhm.
And everything about him was mysterious, no doubt about it. It's a shame he died so early.
Mm.
Raymond Lewenthal. Look it up on my YouTube
Yes.
thing with called The Nucinator, right?
Yes, it's in 4 parts. It's 4 hours worth with him. Mhm.
4 interviews with him. Wow.
Mhm.
I must listen to them again.
Okay, they're worth it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So that's not a bad idea to put that in front of our audience and ourselves. I always wanted to memorize a lot more poetry because maybe then I could understand it better. I don't know
You've
why.
said this before.
Yeah.
What do you feel is the aspect that you are not understanding?
Yeah, I can tell you that it's too much idealism about what poetry is and should be. And it's like says, you're just not good enough to get it, David. You just don't get it. You're not intelligent enough. I don't seem to understand what T.S. Eliot is telling me, or even Shelley.
Hmm.
And I get very bored with certain kinds of,
Okay,
let's say, 17th or 18th century.
I understand. Hmm.
So
And yet, you respond so strongly to the musical forms of those times.
yes.
Hmm.
Maybe you just don't have enough room for all of it.
I
you
think
know?
it's, in your case, simply just the vastness of the scope of and the breadth of the efforts that you make. I think if you were forced to cut yourself off for the things that you're pursuing, that the poetry would come easily.
I don't know, but again, reading poetry would not be my main thing. You see, it would be
yes.
in this case, because I love words,
Hmm.
it would be the writing of it. And I'll tell
Yes.
you a tiny little story. I was horrified myself. I was sitting alone one day at a desk, maybe at home or not, I don't know. And all of a sudden, a poem came out. I don't know how to write poetry. I don't know what it,
All
I
right.
don't know what it means, in the sense of any formal thing.
All right.
It was just free verse.
Mhm.
I look at it. It was called, oh, interesting. Time and tune waits for no man.
All right. Hmm.
Melody goes. You
Yes.
see that time. Time is so important to me, and the work was about time, and I've lost it. I've lost the damn thing. I said to myself, this is good. I don't think it even needs any editing. And I start getting frightened. And all of a sudden, a friend calls me and says, hello, how are you? I said, I want to tell you something. I've never thought I could write a poem in my life. I'm not sure I even love poetry. And a poem just came out of me. And she said, oh no, give that up now. You have too much to do as it is.
It's possible that she meant that, but I'm sure you could have carried the war on yet another front. But It is hard to focus on.
Well, you do know that I had a hallucinatory weekend about 2016 where I was reading a book, a small novel by the Austrian, the one who wrote The Loser, a legend already. He died in Austria. See, I can't remember now.
That's all right. That name I don't know.
Yeah, and I read the book, and I said, "This is not as good as The Loser, that's for sure."
Mhm.
And within 5 minutes, I was writing like a stream of consciousness. I kept writing for 2, 3, 4 hours. I ended, I looked at it, it was gibberish, but there was a story there. I just kept going, going, going. I don't know why. I ended it, and the next day, I edited it,
Mhm.
and I started again. And I went through, in 2 years, 4 or 5 drafts, I think 4. One person read it, a well-known agent, said, "I like it, it's good enough to be published now, but it will not be published because you're not a woman."
Are we speaking now of your novel or
My
the
novel,
poem?
my
Oh, yes.
novel.
Okay. Yes.
The novel is done. I've read it only once in the 5, 6, 7 years since it's done.
Mm.
That one person's telling me that it can't be published and that it would, only women get published by novels. They're the buyers, they're the editors,
I
they're
see.
the public.
Mhm.
Men don't read novels, he said.
Mm.
Well, of course I do, you do.
Mhm.
And that was it. I didn't have the guts or the energy. His little rejection, which should mean nothing to someone else, stopped me completely, and I've never read but once,
Mm.
a few years ago, 2 years ago, I think, the novel again. I know you've been wanting me to read it to you. I'm too frightened.
Okay. Well, do you think that fear may pass?
It hasn't yet, has it?
Oh, well, we'll see.
Every week I think of it. Maybe I
Okay.
will start our time together with
Mhm.
reading you a page.
Mm.
And I'm terrified that, you'll laugh at it because I'm no novelist. I never in my life thought of writing a novel.
Hmm.
I've written the book The Art of the Piano, or the essential canon of classical music, or Horowitz's evenings, Horowitz evenings. But the idea of a novel, it never even came to me. And that moment after that book I read by, I started the book, and I never stopped until it was done.
And yet, as I've remarked to you, Evenings with Horowitz, though it comes from actuality, has the quality of a novel. So I don't know why in any way you would doubt that something that came out of your imagination would be any different. I know Thomas Carlyle said that he didn't want to become a novelist simply because he didn't want to go through the labor of the creation of incident. So you have
I understand that.
Right,
That's
and
why
yet
very few incidents in mine. Yeah,
and
I
yet
don't
you,
describe trees or cement or anything.
well, I think even that he means the scenarios or
Even
plots.
the scenario, yes, the plot.
And yet you did it.
I did it.
And I think most fiction writers would confess, if it's of any quality, would also say that there is no such thing as fiction. They're simply just in a way to mask what they remember.
Yes.
So I'm sure because in fact our discussions about your novel, you've even revealed that to a degree. I know it's a novel about a prize fighter,
Yes.
and yet I think there are lots of things that you've referenced that sounded like they had autobiographical elements.
Oh, of course. Every piece of fiction is a lie unless you say,
Yes.
is it impossible that to separate, your own
Yes.
being from the fiction? It got to be somewhere along the line that was like something you didn't do. It has to be so purely creative. Well, nobody thinks like that. That's you write about what has happened, and it's in a very distilled way. And I'm sure that I could tell you in every single scene where I really am.
Well, I think yes, you should be reassured because no one has succeeded in that pure act of creation. It reminds me of that phrase of Faulkner about Christianity, where he says that there's nothing wrong with Christianity, but no one's tried it yet.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
So, I think the same can be said for pure fiction. No one could do it. It would just end up being like a child sitting in a room saying, and then, and then, and then. So it's all masked autobiography.
Wonderfully said. And what is interesting about this, we'll close with this,
Yes.
if you don't mind. What's interesting is I have to write an article, let's say, on something. I'll go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The gestation, the this, the that, there was never a moment of thinking about it, of the plot, of where I was going. It was like just coming out of me. That was the fun part of this. Everything I've ever done, playing one piece is difficult. I love drawing, quick drawing, because the line drawing comes quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's never bad if you just say go
Mm-hmm.
and not think. Thought stops action. And here we come to this novel. Jack, it poured out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I would do it and work on it 2 or 3 days,
Mhm.
a week here and there, 2 hours, 1 hour, whatever. And then the great part of it was, it just came. I never once thought of it ever, not taking a walk,
Mhm.
not in a dream. It just came. It started and it ended.
Well, you've only primed my curiosity even further, so beware my demands. I may.
No, it's just trash.
Well,
But we'll
so
see.
you say.
We'll see.
All
We'll
right.
see. I want to thank you so
Mhm.
much, all of you, for listening. I think that we've said a great deal. I hope that it's not too long. Or if you did leave, come back to us, and please subscribe, and please tell us what you think of us. Tell us if we're good or we're bad or you're wasting your time. What do you think?
Yes, I think we can endure the criticism and bear the praise as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for listening. This is David Duvall.
Thank you.